Oh shoot, it's Battle Buddies again. All right, guys, welcome back. We are doing this. Last time we talked about aggressive strategies and tactics. Today we're talking about control, strategy, and tactics. Let's jump right into it. When we look at control as a strategy, as a tactic, I think almost everybody understands the idea of like slowly grinding down your opponent, right? The idea of controlling the battlefield. There's another element to it that we can discuss that's perhaps more nuanced, and that is the idea of forcing your opponent to make decisions and you knowing what those decisions are. That is, to me, good control playing, whether you're wargaming or doing whatever. And we can look at that. Of course, there's a chess term for it, right? So like we can look at a couple chess things. The chess term we're going to look at first is called the zugzwang. The zugzwang means, I don't fucking know. It means there's no good option. It could also mean you're screwed, man. Let's look at how it works. I learned this one, I think, from chess.com. Shout out to chess.com. So what happens here is that the white king, it's his turn to move, right? White's turn to move. And white really wants to protect this pawn because it doesn't want the king to get it. But it can't, because if it goes down, it's in check. And it can't take the black pawn to try to force like a stalemate because the black king is protecting it. So it is a little bit fucked. So what can it do? I don't know. Maybe it moves up. Sure. Who cares? There's no good move. And what that lets the black king do is go right here. Boom. That's not good. Oh, we're still in a zugzwang because the white king still can't do anything, right? It can't come down. It can't take the pawn. The best thing it can do is kind of stay near it, maybe. So it goes like right there. All right. Well, the black king don't give a hoot. He's just going to move to the side. Now we're in more zugzwang, right? The white king can't do anything. It can't come here. It can't take the pawn because of the black king. It can't do anything. So maybe it like moves over here. I don't know. And then the pawn just gets to start moving. And what it's going to do, it's going to keep moving and moving and moving until it turns into a queen. And then it's probably going to checkmate that king right there. That is, to me, good control. It's not just about going slow and grinding down your opponent. It's about like forcing a situation where you understand what your opponent can do, and what they can do isn't anything good. That's a zugzwang. That's a good strategy and tactic to try to do. The reason why control is grindy to me is that in order to force that to happen, you need to get rid of pieces, right? You need to reduce the variables possible. So a siege suddenly makes a lot of sense because on a battlefield, especially like an ancient battlefield, it's huge. And there's like rivers and rocks and stuff, and there's flanks and men and food and supply lines, and there's so many variables. Like, how are you going to possibly force your opponent to do things? Like, how are you going to correctly predict what they are going to do? It's too dynamic. So to make it more static, to make it something that you can predict, you reduce the variables. You encircle the whole city. That makes sense to me. Okay, let's look at another one. This one is it's interesting, this strategy for chess, but it's a good I think showing of how maybe the way that I see control may not be how everybody else sees control, which is fair, right? You could be wrong, I could be right, which we all know is true. But when I play against my father-in-law is a very control chess player. He's very good, especially his late game. And he likes to play what we call the Queen's Gambit, which isn't really a gambit. That's why I didn't cover it on the aggro side. The Queen's Gambit means you start with the Queen's pawn. And I just hate this, right? Because it's so good the way he plays it. Well, I can do something called the King's Indian. I'll play a little variation on the King's Indian, not exactly how him and I play it, but it will kind of show you what a control player will do. He's putting out his queen's pawn because he's trying to attack the middle. Remember, in our aggro strategy, trying to get that early position is really good, right? Early positioning is strong. It can set up a romantic kind of sweeping gesture that could just end the game outright. But when you're playing control, You're willing to give up some early position, for a later counterattack. I know I'm going to have to attack the center at some point, so I'm going to slowly build up there. All right, I put out my knight. That's not great. My knight doesn't threaten this piece. It protects a pawn that I don't have out. So, like, he can't just advance this pawn, but I don't think he would anyway. So, if he's playing the Queen's Gambit, he'll put out his next pawn. That's now the Queen's Gambit. And I'm still going to just be like, I don't give a hoot what you're doing. I'm going late game. So, I start up what we call a Vinchetto. Cool move, cool tactic. White would often start like, well, if that's how we're playing it, that's how we're playing it. They bring out their knight because now they're getting ready to attack this square, right? This square that I don't have a piece on. They could just move this guy up. All of a sudden, this pawn would have a protection here, and the knight protecting, and the queen protecting. That is a pretty good setup for the middle. But I don't really care because I am playing a late game here. So I move my bishop. That completes what we call the Vinchetto. Okay, I don't know. What would my father-in-law do here? He probably would start doing the same thing. I don't know if that's what the right move is. It doesn't. This next move for white doesn't really matter for what I'm trying to say. Because then I'm just going to castle. And castling may not be the right move, but I think visually this will show what a control tactic looks like. The idea here is that I've given up position for a better attack later. Because once I move this knight, right? Like, let's say I move this knight, I don't know, to like right here or something, even though that could be attacked, but I could attack it back later. I have this bishop on a great line. The black bishop on the black side is the strong bishop in my mind because it protects the king. It has this great pawn structure here, and it has this f7 pawn, which is we've already talked about. It's really strong. Sometimes in the Sicilian, we call this the dragon, right? It's a cool name. My king is super protected. He's not getting my king. I have a rook that's ready to go. It's talking to my queen, which is good. I can move up any of these pawns to start now attacking that middle. And now I can start making a play for the middle now that I have pieces set up. So this isn't necessarily a zugzwang, right? I'm not necessarily trying to I'm not trying to reduce all the variables to anticipate what my opponent's doing. Instead, I'm trying to gather resources to then make the best attack I can. And time I'm going to sacrifice for this. And this is control. I struggle with this in games, waiting, partly because maybe I'm just too sporadic, but I can't always anticipate what my opponent's going to do. Maybe if there's no variables there, but I'm not always confident that I know what my opponent's going to do. Because when I feel like my opponent's trying to read me, I try to go way off grid, right? And try to do something crazy. It doesn't always work, right? But that's what I try to do. So those are like the basic elements of control. And if you're going super control, oh man, you could do it again, right? Set up 2 Vinchettos right there. Ooh, look at those. Let's just move this guy out of the way. So now my bishops doesn't just look like a castle, right? Look, I have like rooks. I have some sets, like sides of my castle. I have bishops that are cross attacking. The snipers, right? You're not getting in there. It's cool stuff. So that's control. Drop us a comment. Let us know what you love.